What did you guys think about the first cabinet meeting? Any thoughts out of that? Elon Musk's involvement? Liked it, hated it?
Elon Musk's involvement is kind of it's a lot of involvement, which makes sense. He's making a lot of news, so you'd probably want him there to make more news, right?
I guess. I thought the one part I thought was weird was when he looked at the cabinet secretaries and he's like, "Does anybody not want Elon? Like, do you think anybody's going to say anything?" No. And I can only imagine the number of them that are like, "Yeah, we're in a group chat. We're talking about shit." No, I just thought that was interesting. But yeah.
It goes back to our little dispute about whether or not the cabinet secretaries were really telling people not to send or respond to those emails. I think that the media is trying to fabricate some sort of rift in the administration. Aren't they a team? Like, I would think that Tulsi, RFK, those two in particular are probably friends and fans of what Elon's doing. And it's not like a territorial thing. Aren't they a team? The administration is a team. They're all on the same page about what they're doing.
I mean, RFK is great on health. I get it. Agreed. Good health and humans, HHS. I get it. Great pick. But if he's cutting USAID and that's cutting environmental programs, don't you think that RFK is going to be a little pissy about that?
Is it cutting our environmental programs? And no.
I mean,
if anybody in the administration understands
the rangers that have gotten fired,
if anybody in the administration understands the corruption that's inherent in the federal government and the programs and the foreign policy, I would think RFK would be top of that list.
RFK was like a full-blown Democrat for the longest time. He never once has talked about. He's known about it. If you say he's known about it, then like my daughter's showing up. Well, just a second, please. Just a second, please.
He is a full-blown Democrat.
He's a full-blown Democrat who supported the federal government every step of the way, like has always been, except for pharmaceutical companies. Other than that, he's rah. Like, let's go feds. Like, he's not like some small government type of guy. He's aware of, if he's aware of it, he's never said anything about it and has supported big government. Voted for Biden. Voted for big government, Obama, all the time. Not that the Republicans would have been less. Why is she doing this? Would have been less government. She's really distracting me. I'm gonna mute myself, and I will be right back. You guys discuss amongst yourselves.
To your point, I think no, I disagree. Yeah. Oh, actually, so they're a team, yes, but I think in a perfect world, we could say that they don't care about their territories, but they care about their territories. I think one, if you're at that level of government, regardless of how pure your heart is, you're going to get territorial when you have people trying to step, when you have a lot of plans that you want implemented yourself. Two, they signed up to work for Trump. They did not sign up to work for Elon. And so there probably are personality differences that come with that. And I can imagine that there is conflict. Three, we've seen the conflict because Vivek got fired or whatever happened with that. So like, we know that there is some sort of conflict. That doesn't mean it's going to cause major disruption or anything, but I definitely think there's conflict. And lastly, I think you have most of these people, I wouldn't say most, a lot of them have had long histories in or around government. And so I do think in their mind, a lot of them are like, well, we know how this works. And this is how we want to, these are the levers and the buttons we want to push to get to where we want to go. Whereas he comes in from outside of government and is like, this is how we do it in the business arena. And there's conflict there as well. I mean, I'm not going to say they're all lifelong bureaucrats because most of them aren't, but I think they've all worked in and around government enough that they have their certain ways of doing things. And there's probably conflict with that when it comes to him. So I think with Trump saying that, like, does anybody not want Elon here to speak up? I think that was him flexing his muscle to tell them to put them back in place. Like, I don't think the silence there was because no one had a problem. I think the silence there was because they were like, well, like, he's clearly showing where he is, so let's all just tamp it back down a bit.
Oh, maybe for some. I think for others, no. I mean, I think that what Elon is doing is he's trying to get rid of. I would say, let's say the thesis is Doge is trying to get rid of corruption, eliminate unnecessary expenses, eliminate unnecessary staff, eliminate unnecessary programs. In the case of DoD, Hegseth, DNI Tulsi, HHS RFK, FBI Patel. I would say all of those 4 are on the same page about getting rid of that, getting rid of those things. Maybe some of these other secretaries that were appointed that have a history in the executive branch, maybe they feel like what you described, but we're talking about those 4 agencies at least, which have been the high profile ones.
Okay, but let's talk about the second biggest state. Marco's definitely not where he is.
That's probably true. Yeah, that's
and
true.
so I can only imagine that that's a massive conflict there behind the scenes.
Yeah, but Marco Rubio,
I guess we'll never know. Palace intrigue.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean, Marco Rubio and Tulsi Gabbard both having served as, in the positions they've served. I feel like they would probably have already known about all of the government corruption and waste because they were a part of it and approving or not approving, voting for, voting against. What are you squinting your face for, Michael? You think that they were oblivious? Like they were a couple of doofuses that just didn't understand. Like you understood that there was waste and fraud in the federal government. You don't think Marco Rubio and Tulsi Gabbard knew? I wouldn't
combine the two of them into the same category.
I mean, well, okay. I haven't heard either one of them ever say anything about before Elon Musk, and cut it in Doge and cutting all this stuff. I don't think they've ever done anything to actually do that. I don't think have they ever said anything, made a public statement like, hey, there's too much waste and fraud in the federal government. We should do something about that. Or did they sit in their elected positions and vote for more of it?
Tulsi Gabbard, for her entire career as an elected official, opposed the waste and fraud of our foreign policy and going into other countries and trying to change their elected officials
through military
the whole time.
Through military action. I doubt that she cared about sending $7 million for DEI concerts in Brazil.
Did she know?
What I mean, how could she not know? I mean, how could she?
Because Mike Benz. Because
at the very least, she knows that stuff like that is happening. Maybe not that specific one, but she's aware that bullshit is happening, and
Mike Benz revealed the USAID story about 2 years ago. Congress couldn't even get that information. They weren't giving that information. The intelligence agencies and the military establishment did not turn over. We're sending $50 million in condoms to Palestine, which actually isn't even $50 million in condoms. It's $50 million for some slush fund project that they're working on. They weren't sharing that information with Congress.
Yes, but Congress is aware that there's a ton of fraud and waste in the federal government, and they don't do anything. They don't say, hey, we're not getting any of this information that we're asking for from the intelligence agencies and the military industrial complex. We should, start, an online ruckus, a little grassroots, get some people angry about this. We should, call a press conference. We should do more about this. They just voted for more of it.
Well, so I think you make a good point, but the thing is, at the end of the day, no one did. Unfortunately, Trump did not do it in his first term. None of these MAGA congressmen who were running around screaming Doge did it. None of the state lawmakers who were calling for Doge did it. No one did until who the person that they looked. Elon Musk is this celebrity who took a favoring to them, and then now they're like, yes, we love everything. And I think a lot of it's great, obviously, but none of them did or said any of this. And Rand Paul, sure, or Mike Lee, Thomas Massey. I can't say that there was no one, but few and far between. And Rand Paul would do the annual thing of the pork list and stuff like that. But I think some of this stuff is so extreme and so crazy that you couldn't even imagine it even if you wanted to, right? I just feel like it's just so out there that the craziest of crazy people had to think this up. So to try to eradicate something that you don't know exists and you don't know where to look, I think that's really hard. But they should have been looking much longer than they have been.
I mean, as someone that follows Houston politics pretty closely, Charles.
Yes.
And I'm not saying I just imagine that Houston is the same as Austin. I follow Austin politics and what they spend their money on, what they vote on pretty closely. And they vote on a bunch of crazy, crazy shit all the time. And very similar things. And sending money to Egypt for a fucking gay fashion show or something. Why is Austin doing that? What the fuck is happening? Painting murals, like homeless people painting murals in the library. What's happening? Why are we doing this? It's not that surprising or crazy to think that the federal government, like you're right, Rand Paul would every year the Festivus list. He's doing it. Like what? This is not news to anybody. The specifics might be news, but it's not news that it's happening.
Fair.
Yeah, but also as someone that follows Houston government, well, you're talking about Austin, which is a fully progressive city. But as someone who follows Houston, you know how well even unsophisticated bureaucrats in the Houston government can conceal information, even from the elected officials. The bureaucracy has a way of, I mean, you've seen an Austin City Council agenda. It's not 150 items on accident. That's on purpose. It keeps the elected officials running around like crazy trying to figure out all this stuff that's going on, while the real stuff that's happening is happening in the bureaucracy, and they don't even have any oversight or insight into what is actually going on.
Yeah. And I mean, and also there's so much of a just push down of some authority to these unelected, not just bureaucrats, but commissions and this and that and the other, that then go and spend this money, that it is really hard to dig into this stuff unless you have whistleblowers who are telling you that this is happening. But at the end of the day, you have 435 members of Congress, many of whom you would have hoped had this mindset before and would look for this kind of stuff, and they didn't. Like, what's the point of having that position if you're not going to use it to flex muscle to try to advance the beliefs that you say you hold? And they never did until this year. And so now we're finding a bunch of stuff. Better late than never, though.
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying Tulsi Gabbard, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, some of them, did they do as much as they could? No, but they did some, and we shouldn't compare them to Mike Rogers, for example, or
it's crazy that you put Tulsi Gabbard next to Thomas Massey and Rand Paul.
Why?
I mean, because she has good foreign policy, but I don't think that she's like Rand Paul or Thomas Massey level of like, you know, Thomas Massey comes out of the video the other day like, hey, I'm not voting for this budget bill because it puts us like $10 more trillion in debt. And let me break it down for you like year by year, even under the like most conservative best estimates put out by the government. Like we're still $10 trillion in the hole. Like that's why I'm not voting for it. I don't care if Donald Trump calls me personally every day for a month. I'm voting no. Like that.
Okay, create three categories.
I'm just
my point was she's not like even in Congress, she was not a rubber stamp for the establishment. Did she go to the same extremes as Thomas Massey? No. So you have three categories. You have Thomas Massey, and then a second category that's like Tulsi Gabbard and some of these people who do some good stuff. And then you have the majority of Congress, which is just a rubber stamp. She's not a rubber stamp. She wasn't a rubber stamp, I would argue.
I'd have to go back and look at her voting record. All I know, I could only say confidently based on my gut that she wasn't a rubber stamp on foreign policy.
Well, that's fair. And we can revisit this conversation. You know, we can revisit it. Everything